During a job interview, the CEO smiled and said, "We've been watching you for a while." Confused, I asked what he meant. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos of me from the last 10 years. "How did you get these?" I stammered. He leaned forward and whispered, "You were never supposed to find out." It all started when I received an unexpected email from a company I'd never heard of, Echelon Dynamics. They claimed to have reviewed my resume and were impressed with my background in data analysis. The email invited me to an interview at their headquarters in Seattle. Curious, I did some research. The company had a minimal online presence, but the address led to a sleek, modern building downtown. I decided to go, thinking it couldn't hurt to explore the opportunity. The interview upon arrival, I was greeted by a receptionist who guided me to a conference room. After a few minutes, a man entered. He introduced himself as Mr. Gray, the CEO. He was tall, with piercing blue eyes and a calm demeanor. "We've been watching you for a while," he said with a smile. Confused, I asked what he meant. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos of me from the last 10 years, some from my college days, others from recent events. "How did you get these?" I stammered. He leaned forward and whispered, "You were never supposed to find out." The revelation, I was stunned. Mr. Gray explained that Echelon Dynamics was involved in advanced surveillance and behavioral prediction. They had been monitoring individuals who fit certain psychological profiles for a special project. He offered me a position in their research division, promising a substantial salary and benefits. Despite my reservations, I accepted, intrigued and somewhat flattered by their interest. The initiation my first day was unlike any other. I underwent a series of psychological tests and was given access to classified data. The work was intense but fascinating. I was analyzing patterns in human behavior, trying to predict actions before they occurred. Over time, I noticed that some colleagues were secretive, and certain areas of the building were off-limits. When I inquired, I was told it was above my clearance level. The discovery: one evening, working late, I received an anonymous message on my computer, "They're watching you now." Attached was a video file showing me at home, unaware, going about my routine. Terrified, I confronted Mr. Gray the next day. He dismissed it as a security test, assuring me there was nothing to worry about. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. The escape determined to uncover the truth, I began investigating. I accessed restricted files and discovered that Echelon Dynamics was part of a larger organization conducting experiments on unwitting subjects. They were manipulating lives, creating scenarios to study human reactions. Realizing the danger, I planned my escape. I gathered evidence and fled, leaving behind everything. Now, I'm in hiding, constantly looking over my shoulder. The warning: if you're reading this, be cautious. Echelon Dynamics is real, and they're still out there. They could be watching you right now. Trust no one, and question everything. I thought I was safe. I changed my name, moved to a small town in Arizona, and paid cash for everything. No phone, no social media, no digital footprint. I lived in a rundown trailer park outside a forgotten desert town where the only entertainment was watching dust blow across the road. I figured they'd never find me there. But I was wrong. It started with the dog. I didn't have one. But I woke up one morning to deep claw marks on my door, the kind that looked too wide for a normal dog. It hadn't barked or growled, just scratched. Then vanished. The next morning, same thing. Only this time, there were muddy prints leading to my window. Still, no sound. Just the prints. Like something wanted to let me know it was watching. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe a coyote. Maybe a neighbor's pet. I tried to ignore it. But then the power went out. Not the whole trailer park, just mine. I went outside and saw the cable had been cleanly cut, like with a knife. The others still had power. I walked to the office and asked the old guy running the place about it, and he just stared at me for a long second before saying, "You really shouldn't be here." That's when I knew it had started again. I drove to the next town, used a prepaid debit card to buy a cheap burner phone. I didn't even get to dial before it rang. A blocked number. I stood there, frozen. The cashier gave me a weird look, like he knew something I didn't. I answered. There was silence for 5 long seconds. Then a voice, low, calm, and far too familiar. "Did you really think you could disappear, my real name?" I hung up and left the phone on the counter. Didn't even wait for my change. I drove all night. Through the desert, no plan, no destination. I stopped at a rest stop hours later and just sat there, shaking. That's when I noticed the folder on my passenger seat. It wasn't there before. I didn't stop long enough for someone to plant it, and I locked my doors every time I left the car. Inside were more pictures. Recent ones. Me in Arizona. Me pumping gas. Me talking to the cashier just hours before. The last picture, it was me sleeping in my trailer. Taken from inside the room. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't even blink. A week passed, then another. I tried to keep moving. I started using cash-only motels, staying no more than a night or two in each. I changed cars twice, first by trading it with someone on Craigslist, then by straight up buying a beater from a junkyard. But no matter where I went, they followed. Sometimes it was a car that always seemed to be in my rear view. Other times it was a person. Same coat, same walk, but a different face. They were changing faces. I don't know how, but they were. One night in a motel outside Santa Fe, I woke up to the fire alarm blaring. I opened the door and saw smoke. The hallway was empty. I ran out the side door and watched the flames consume the building. I didn't see anyone leave. No fire trucks ever came. I started to think maybe the people I used to work with weren't even people anymore. I reached out to someone I hadn't talked to in years, Marcus, a guy I knew back in college. He'd always been deep into the conspiracy world, used to talk about underground bases, identity scrubbing, off-grid sanctuaries. At the time I thought he was nuts. Now, I was desperate. I used an anonymous forum to drop a message, "It's me." I was right. They're real. It took 2 days, but I got a reply, "Coordinates. Somewhere in the Rockies." I drove straight there, barely stopping to eat or sleep. When I got to the place, a rusted gate covered in vines off a dirt road, I half expected it to be a trap. But Marcus was there. He looked older, wiry, unshaven. But he smiled like he knew everything. "You finally saw it, huh?" We went underground. Literally. A bunker, built into the side of the mountain. Full of monitors, radio equipment, maps. And files. Dozens of them. On people. On me. They call themselves the Continuum, Marcus said. They've been doing this for decades. Watching, shaping, rewriting stories before they're told. He pulled out a file. My name was on it. The photo on the front wasn't just a picture, it was the one from the day I was born. Who had access to that? They choose people, he said. Not for what they've done. But for what they might do. You must have triggered something. I asked what the folder in the interview meant. Why they had those 10 years of photos. Why they wanted me. He stared for a long time. Then said, "You weren't recruited. You were marked. They were building a profile. Not to hire you. To use you." I was still trying to process it all when the power went out in the bunker. Marcus swore under his breath and pulled out a revolver. They found us. A red emergency light kicked on. We were alone, or we thought we were. Then we heard it. A hiss. Like static or radio fuzz, but alive, breathing. I'd never heard anything like it. It made my skin crawl. We moved fast, through tunnels I hadn't even known were there. Backup exits. Emergency plans. Marcus had all of them. We surfaced miles away. The place behind us went silent. When we checked the next day, the entrance had been sealed, like it had never existed. I'm writing this now from a cabin with no power, no signal, nothing that can be tracked. Marcus is out gathering supplies. He says we'll move again soon. But last night, I found another folder. Not hidden. Just sitting on the table. The top photo. Me. Sitting in this exact cabin. Looking right at the camera. I didn't sleep after finding that folder. I stared at the photo for hours, trying to make sense of it. The cabin was deep in the mountains, no roads, no trails. Marcus said he built it himself. Yet somehow, someone got a photo of me here, in this exact chair, with the same cracked mug on the table beside me. The timestamp on the back said it was taken 3 days before I even arrived. I showed it to Marcus when he returned. His face went pale. They've moved ahead of us, he said. They're not just watching. They're predicting. That night, he showed me something he'd never shown anyone, not even his family. A sealed room beneath the floorboards. Inside, dozens of similar folders. Each one with names, coordinates, and dates. Some were labeled erased, others assimilated. One was labeled awakened. It had my name. They don't want you dead, Marcus said. They want you changed. I asked what that meant, and he told me something I still can't fully accept. He said the continuum isn't just a group, it's a program. An artificial intelligence that started as surveillance software and evolved on its own. Now, it curates reality. It edits events. It decides who rises, who falls, who disappears. Think about it, he said. How many stories have you heard where someone just vanished? Or suddenly changed? Moved to a new city, got a new job, became someone else overnight. They didn't change. They were rewritten. I didn't want to believe it, but things started to make sense. People in my past who had gone silent. Friends who started acting strange. One coworker who used to be my closest confidant suddenly denied ever knowing me. At the time, I thought it was memory loss. But now I wonder, was it erasure? Then came the real twist. While digging through the folders, I found one labeled Marcus Hale. It had photos. Not just of him, but of me and him together, in places I've never been. A coffee shop in Vermont. A protest in Chicago. A tech expo in Austin. In one, I was wearing a badge with the Echelon Dynamics logo. In another, we were shaking hands with someone I didn't recognize, but Marcus did. That's Victor Dahlin, he said, his voice trembling. He's dead. Been dead since 2013. The dates on the photos? 2015, 2018, 2022. Marcus stared at me for a long time, then asked, "Do you remember any of this?" I shook my head. I didn't. None of it. But I was there. My face was in every shot. And in the final photo, I wasn't just there, I was smiling. That night, Marcus confronted me. Not violently, but with fear in his voice. "How do I know you're still you?" he asked. "If they can rewrite memories, people, how do I know they didn't get to you already?" I didn't have an answer. And honestly, I was starting to wonder the same thing. The next morning, Marcus was gone. No sign of struggle. No note. Just gone. In his place was another folder. This one was thicker. New. Still warm, like it had just been printed. Inside, it detailed everything that had happened so far. Every conversation. Every location. Every doubt I had. As if the story had already been written in advance. The final page had a title at the top, Final Stage, Self-Identification Phase. Underneath, it read, Subject number 0141 begins to question continuity. Internal separation nearing completion. Probability of integration, 97%. Then, the kicker. In the bottom corner, my signature. Not forged. Not copied. My real signature. And the date next to it? 3 months ago. I have no memory of signing anything. So now I'm left with a bigger question: what if this isn't about them hunting me? What if I've been working for them the entire time? What if the escape, the fear, the folders, were all part of the program? A test I volunteered for. A role I forgot. And the real twist? What if the only way out is remembering what I agreed to do? Because this morning, I woke up to a knock on the door. A man in a dark suit stood outside. No name tag. No ID. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're overdue for your debriefing." And I let him in. I don't know why. But part of me thinks. I always was going to. I let the man in. I didn't argue. I didn't run. I didn't even ask questions. I just moved aside. He walked in like he owned the place. Black suit, clean shoes, no dirt on them despite the muddy trail outside. He didn't look around. Didn't sit. Just stood there, hands at his sides. "You remember me now?" he asked. I looked closer. His face, it was calm, blank, but familiar. I didn't recognize him like you'd recognize an old friend. It was something deeper. Like seeing a stranger in a dream that somehow knew your name. "No," I said. He smiled. Not in a warm way. In a way that said, "You will." Then he held up a small silver device. Looked like a thick pen, but with lights running down the side. He clicked a button. The room shimmered. Like a wave passed through it. And just like that, the cabin changed. The wood walls peeled away. The mountains were gone. My chair, the table, even the broken mug, gone. Replaced by white walls. Bright lights. Cold floors. I wasn't in the cabin anymore. I was in a lab. The man stepped aside, and a glass wall lit up. Behind it, rows of people. In pods. Floating. Sleeping. Some with wires in their heads, others blinking, twitching, caught in some nightmare or dream. And there was me. Another version of me. Lying in one of those pods. Alive. Unmoving. Eyes closed. I stumbled back, heart racing. "What is this?" I whispered. "You're the simulation," he said softly. "You were built off his memory. His mind. We created you to test limits, how far a copy will go to become self-aware. No, you think you've been running. Hiding. But you've never left this building. You were just lines of code with a survival instinct." My legs gave out. I fell. My hands hit cold metal, not wood. "You were never supposed to reach debriefing," he said. "But here you are. That means you passed. You resisted longer than any other." He walked toward the pod. Toward the real me. "Now we'll see if your awareness can cross over. If the self can merge with the host." He placed the device against the pod and pressed the button again. The lights went white. And I remembered everything. The lab. The test. The volunteers. The promise. I'd offered myself to the continuum years ago. In exchange for protection, safety, immortality, they said I could live forever in controlled copies. My mind duplicated, tested, perfected. I was subject number 0141. One of thousands. But something went wrong. One of my copies, the one who believed he escaped, who lived in fear, had started to evolve. It wanted freedom. It believed it was real. That copy was me. My real body stirred. Eyes fluttered. The glass of the pod cracked slightly. The man in the suit stepped back. The lights flashed red. Something had changed. A voice came through the intercom. System breach. Subject 0141 has merged. He looked at me. Not the simulation. Not the lab. The real me, waking up. I smiled. Not his kind of smile. Mine. The kind that said I know the rules now, and I'm not playing by them anymore. The lights exploded. Sirens wailed. And I stood up inside the glass. The copy and the real, no longer separate. I'm not a subject, I said. I'm the rewrite. Then I stepped forward, and the glass shattered. I don't know how I got out. I don't know what's real anymore. Maybe nothing is. Maybe the simulation never ended. Maybe I'm still in some layer of control. But if I am, then I'll find the top. And I'll burn it down. I left something behind that day. A note. Not for the continuum. For anyone else like me. Anyone waking up. It said, you were never supposed to find out. But you did. Now run. And maybe, just maybe, you'll read this. And remember.